Good morning. Good to be with you. My name is Jason Shepperd. I'm the church planter of Church Project in the Woodlands, Texas, and we started Church Project Network. All of us who love Jesus love his church, and all of us who love the church in the book of Acts. Yet we all have some frustration with why these things aren't happening, and we really believe that God loves his church so much that he gave us some clues, some DNA, some evidence of what he wanted the church to be. And so we see one of those clues clearly for me in Titus, where Paul told Titus, the reason I left you in Crete was to straighten out what was unfinished and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. Paul wanted everybody to have a pastor available to them, like a pastor for all the people. Because Titus, there's no way you can get to all the people, and there's no way all the people can get to you. And so Paul said, let's put a pastor in every place for all the people to have a pastor available to them. Yet somehow, over the centuries, the church evolved. We had the clergification of the church, and we separated and elevated the clergy, and then we centralized them in a place, and then that place became a sacred space, rather than sacred things happening in a space. And so we've seen the demise of the priesthood of the believer because we've taken power away from the people to pastor one another. And so the overreaction to this has been a movement to isolated house churches. And so house churches are incredible, and we're a part of planting house churches, but the isolation of them has reduced their power. And when a house church falls, a house church pastor gets sick or leaves or moves, the house church often crumbles. So as we really prayed through, what is this beauty of the power of the local house church, but the power also of connectivity, we planted Church Project. Church Project is a church of many house churches. And I'll show you this map here. This is where we are now. We're on the north side of Houston in the Woodlands. And in this picture are up to 46 house churches, maybe 50 or so. I don't see the highest number here, zoomed in right here. But all of these places represent a little church. And all the functions of the church happen at every one of these dots. Everywhere you see, there is a pastor and a church that meets there, and somebody is overseeing all the duties of the church in that place. One of these numbers represents Jacob Villa. He's the pastor of a house church that's hosted by someone else. Jacob is a captain in the Houston Fire Department by day, but by night, Jacob's doing weddings and funerals, pastoring people. He carries out all the functions of this church. Somebody wandered into our church, a young adult. They met another young adult. They ended up getting married. They graduated. One graduated from A&M, another graduated from another college, moved to our city for jobs, met in our body. They ended up going to Jacob's house church. Their parents flew them out to a great destination wedding, and they didn't invite me to do the wedding. Jacob did the wedding because he's their pastor. I actually barely know these people, but Jacob knows them really well. 2 weeks ago, a young adult in our church was hiking in the west, in the mountains, and he died. And he had been in a house church for years. Older people, younger people, rich people, poor people, people of different colors. When you gather geographically, you force diversity. And so our only identifier to gather is geographically. And so when Salo, a young adult in our church, needed to get into community in a house church, there was no other way other than to go to a house church. And he went to this house church where Wes Cossack is the house church pastor. And 2 weeks ago, when Salo died and his family brought his body back, Wes Cossack, who was an app developer, got his house church together, cared for them, prayed for them, and then Wes spoke at Salo's funeral last week. Aaron Harris runs a property development company, but he also is a pastor of one of these places right here. I'll let you see some pictures. These are just normal people. They have jobs doing what they do every day, but Aaron Harris in his house church, there was a mom who was in an abusive relationship. She and her daughter had to get out of the house. Aaron helped facilitate that. They had been working with her, but it got dangerous, and the mom and the daughter lived in the home of one of the families in the house church for the next 7 months until they could get their own place. Somebody in our body of 8,000, 10,000 people who now gather around what we call Church Project, at least in the Woodlands area and other church projects, they have people, was sexually assaulted a couple of months ago. The house church pastor, Justin, and his wife have been helping her. The woman went into a deep depression. Women from the house church went to her home, got her out of bed, cleaned her up, and took her to a counselor. The men went to the house and got the teenage son and took him out because he's so angry and he doesn't know what to do. There's nobody from our church staff involved in any of this at all other than Justin, house church pastor. Is there a way that we can support you and help you in this? Do you need to know what to do? How can we help you? This is what's happening all the time. Bender's Landing is an incredible neighborhood close to us. In fact, in the house church, they have a woman come, a nanny come and do childcare in the west wing of the house, and very wealthy. But there's also an apartment complex down the street of people who are really poor. And so the closest house church to the people who live in this apartment complex is Bender's Landing. And so Bender's Landing, this family walks in. They're getting into community over months, and then the husband loses his job. And so they pray over him and the wife. The next week they come, there's a paper bag on the table in the middle of the room. Hey guys, before we start, will you please open that up? The couple opens it up. There's thousands of dollars in cash there. They say, we're paying your mortgage for the next 3 months. This guy's going to help you. He knows how to help people find jobs. This person's going to help you with your budget. We're here to support you and walk through this. Lady comes to one of our house churches. She worked at another church, and she got fired a week before she had surgery, and she was fired because she was going to have surgery. And so she had no money. She was a widow. And so she goes to this house church, and their surgery out of pocket is going to cost her $12,000. She doesn't know what to do. The house church raises $6,000 of that. And so the house church pastor came to one of our overseeing pastors and said, we need more. Great, we have collectively, we give to one another and support for these things, so we help finish the rest of that. Michael Byerly is in medical device sales. He's one of these guys, good-looking young guy making a lot of money. He's about to plant, in 1 year, his 4th house church. Out of the house church that he was in, then he became a house church pastor, then he planted 3 house churches, about to plant his 4th. He oversees the 4 house churches that he's planting. He disciples those pastors because every house church begats a house church and every house church pastor begats a house church pastor. And so the yeast at the very beginning is what was most important. 2 house churches have turned into 120 in different places. So what is Michael going to do now? He's going to leave his great paying medical job and they're going to plant a hub of church project 20 minutes away from where all these house churches are and start a new hub. He's going to start with 3 or 4 house churches, and they're going to get an entirely new area of our city, which we've already done 15 minutes away from us in another place, Conroe, just north of us. But the connectivity between all of these house churches, we do have a small staff. On the ratio, we can have a team 1/10 the size of most churches our size because we don't have to spend a lot of money on pastors doing programs or pastors doing all the pastoring. We just have to pastor the pastors. And so we support our pastors. We do know that all the parents of all these kids and all these house churches, well, they want to have a camp for their kids. So we have a camp, and on Sunday we have a very simple kids programming, and we do some things to connect all the people. And we want Single Mom and House Church 2 to know Single Mom and House Church 12 and 22 and 32 and 42 and 52. And so we'll have a Single Mom event every once in a while. And so we'll do some things to connect us. But we say the early church was built not only for persecution, but for pandemic. If the early church was built for persecution, surely it can thrive in the pandemic. And we were able to. All of our house churches continued meeting during the pandemic. And by the way, I'm not angry. I'm just excited. Just want to let you know that. All of our house churches continued meeting during the pandemic. In fact, we planted house churches during the pandemic. And now, for the first time, we started some online house churches for people in our community that haven't been ready to or are not willing to get back together. And so we have an online house church on Sunday, an online house church on Wednesday, in addition to all the other in-person house churches that we have. And so people continue to be pastored even during the pandemic. The strength of one church versus the strength of 50 or 60 or 100 churches is beautiful. Hurricane Harvey, we're out in hundreds of homes before other churches show up with their clipboard trying to assess needs. We can deploy people immediately. The freeze that happened in Houston not too many weeks ago, within 2 days, we're in homes, in attics, fixing people's pipes. It was beautiful because one person in our church showed thousands of people on his YouTube channel how to fix a pipe. So we said, well, why don't you come and teach hundreds of people how to do that? And we have all these house churches and we'll deploy immediately. So we just publicly say, you need help in your house, community, fill this form out and we can do it.